My name is Julie Turney, and this is the HR Sound Off podcast show, the show created for HR and business professionals to discuss pertinent topics and trends as it relates to our professions. We're going to have amazing conversations with HR professionals from all over the world, get to learn their origin stories. How did they get into this profession? What do they love about being here? And how they want to set the record straight on that one misconception that really drives them crazy about our profession. Are you ready? I'm ready. Then let's sound off. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of the HR Sound Off podcast show. My name is Julie Turney, and I am your host. Today, I am joined by my guest, Ekow Sani-Thomas. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. I've been doing this recent series where I've been introducing you to amazing people who are working in the HR space, whether in HR or HR adjacent, who are doing great things to bring awareness to how we can create better workplaces, safer workplaces. One of the tools that a lot of you are using is Glassdoor. Why do you use it? To compare organizations, to see if it's a good fit for you, to see if there are good jobs out there. But what if I told you there was a Glassdoor for diversity, equity, and inclusion that could tell you if the organization you're thinking about working with actually does embrace people of color? Well, Ekow did something really amazing, and he created a space that he calls the Glassdoor for diversity and inclusion workplaces, and it's called Inside Voices, right?
That's right.
So tell us, Ekow, a little bit about yourself. Who is Ekow Sani-Thomas?
So my background is actually in real estate finance. I was born in the UK. I'm a mathematician and finance professional by trade. And after over a decade in finance, I just grew tired of companies operating in falsehoods. You know, they were trading on false reputations, and it was damaging not just me, but my peers. I was repeatedly seeing people go through cycles of, for lack of a better term, abuse. And I felt like it was time that someone did something about it.
And so you did. See a need, fill a need.
That's right.
Tell us all about Inside Voices.
So Inside Voices is, like you say, Glassdoor for diversity. It's an opportunity for job seekers to understand how companies really treat people of color by hearing from current employees. We ask employees a series of questions about how the organization treats people of color and the outcomes related to race in the workplace. So it's not just about the individual story of the person submitting the review, but it's also about what's happening at an organizational level. Are there certain departments where there's representation and not in others? Is there pay equity? Can people of color be themselves? We're really trying to give people a holistic view of how race is going to impact the experience of being in that workplace, so that job seekers can make informed decisions about where they want to work. Because, just going into a workplace blind and hoping that it lives up to your expectations, or just hoping that you won't be mistreated, it's not an appropriate way to protect yourself. We really needed an opportunity to share information. I think sharing knowledge is such an important but under-discussed part of DEI work. And so I really wanted to create a space that people could do that with the safety of anonymity, so that they could really speak their truth.
Yeah, and I was going to actually ask you that, like, what is the confidence that people have that what they're saying is they're not going to be exposed as the one who shared that information?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's a two-parter really, because one, there's what we do, and then there's two, what you do.
Right.
I'll say what we do first, and that's, we're protecting your information as much as we can.
Right.
And I'd say for anybody who has questions about, how much that matters to us, our reputation is on the line. Right, my reputation is on the line. If a single person is found to have written an Inside Voices review and faces retaliation as a result, that's going to damage the entire site. The credibility disappears. So this is mutually assured destruction. I'm as invested in your anonymity as you are. On the other side, like I said, the review questions are really around the organizational level outcomes, not necessarily about your own story.
Right.
It's people of color are the majority of our reviewers. Excuse me. People of color are the majority of our reviewers, but white people can
Right.
also review too. And we find that about 10% of our reviews come from allies. Now, that's
Wow.
great cover because when you're in an organization where there are very few people of color, even if you
Yeah.
don't mention your own personal story in the review, it can
Hmm.
feel like you're identifying yourself. It can feel like
Yeah.
exposing
Hmm.
that cover, that 10% of allies, they actually provide a very useful and important service to the
Yeah.
rest of us in saying, you don't know who it is. It's anybody who cares about
Yeah.
DEI.
Wow. That's powerful. So, how does it look to someone going on to Inside Voices? What does the experience look like for them?
Sure. So when you visit the site, you're going to go, and most people do, they go straight to read reviews, right? And
Yeah.
I do think that's helpful. I think you should read before you start writing.
Yeah.
Now, you'll first be presented with, you'll search for the company that you want to look up, and that company will be given a score, which is calculated based on the results of the answers that other people have given. That
Hmm.
score, they'll have a top line score out of 5, and they'll be given subtopic scores for representation, diversity, inclusion,
Hmm.
fairness, and other subtopics.
Right.
We also ask all reviewers, would you recommend your company to a person of color and why? And that why is a free text answer, free text review, where reviewers give us the real nitty gritty. Like this is where people tell you exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
I think you'd be amazed at some of the things that you would find in there that as a person outside an organization, you do not have access to that level of information about how an organization runs.
Hmm.
Particularly when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, where companies
Yeah.
are so carefully guarded about the things that they let out of the organization.
Hmm.
Then if you'd like to read that review, you do have to sign up.
Yeah.
And then you can read one review. And if you want to read more than one review, then you need to write a review. And the
Right.
reason that we do it that way is because studies have shown that people write more balanced reviews if you ask them for information at the point when they're trying to read information, rather than relying on everybody just saying, oh, I want to write a review and then coming straight to the
Yeah.
site.
So you have a lot of science behind it, and just being very practical about how you take on board those reviews. And obviously, before they go live, you would actually review them, right?
No, we don't.
No.
No, we don't
Okay.
review. We don't review reviews. And that's one reason is that we don't want to be in the business of moderating because that does legally push us towards publisher territory.
Okay.
But number two is, you know, we're early, we are grassroots. This is
Yeah.
about having your voice heard.
Right.
These are online reviews. Everybody takes online reviews with a pinch of salt, and I think
So.
that's
Mhm.
appropriate, right? There's
Yeah.
going to be some bad actors who are going to be putting up reviews that are just not legitimate. But I think if
Yeah.
you read them, and particularly if you compare, if you read reviews, all the reviews for a company together and look for
Hmm.
trends,
Hmm.
that's, then you'll be able to get a picture for, okay, is that just one person or is that really
Yeah.
just how it is in the organization?
Hmm.
I don't think we need to be getting involved at that stage.
Right.
And I would point to Glassdoor and say, I do frequently hear complaints from users that, I wrote a review and it mentioned bullying or it mentioned racism, and it either was never posted or it was posted and
Yeah.
shortly soon after taken down.
Taken
And that
down.
level of censorship is just, I don't
Yeah.
think that's acceptable.
Yeah. And you don't need that. People want to get the full picture and they want to
Exactly.
really understand the truth. So thank you so much for creating this space. So how many companies actually are currently reviewed on Inside Voices?
We have several thousand companies on there right now. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So people can go and actually take a look. When would you recommend that people actually start to, okay, take a look at Inside Voices? I know you think about like the job hunting experience, things that people don't necessarily take into consideration. But now that they know that Inside Voices exists, how would you recommend they use it to their advantage?
Sure. So we find that most people come to us at the stage at which they've received some interest from the organization. So
Mm-hmm.
whether that be they applied and now they've been invited to interview, or they were approached by a recruiter. That's usually when people are like, okay, let me just check if this is a place I actually want to invest my time in going through the recruitment process.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's a worthwhile time. I think that's probably the right time if you're in your job hunt. But I
Yeah.
think if you're in an organization and you have any questions about your treatment, you know, and even if you're in an organization where you think that the organization is performing well, I think it's the right time to be looking at our site to see who are my
Yeah.
competitors. Think about your competitors and try to understand where do we benchmark in that, because you may think your company is doing terribly, but when you start to see what's happening in other organizations, you might think actually it's not that bad. I don't want to make a move.
Yeah.
Or you might think this isn't so bad. Every company's the same. And that's something we hear all the time. They're all
Yeah.
doing the same thing. Well, our results show that that's not true. So if you actually start to look at the companies that you might want to move towards, you can see, okay, actually, this one sounds better than the others. And then you can start to think about, well, what kind of roles would I want to fill in that organization? And how can I start to move myself and move my network towards that organization so that when it's time to jump ship, I have a better chance of success.
Yes, definitely. That's some great advice. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to ask you this. I don't even know how to ask you this, Ekow.
Okay, I'm nervous now.
So you're closing a really huge gap for people in the DEI space and also in the HR space as well. And I think a lot of times that there's a huge divide sometimes between DEI and HR. How do you see Inside Voices being one of those spaces that would really help both DEI to build their case in the organization as well as HR? I know that's a big one, right?
It's a tough one, yeah. I see us I see Inside Voices right now, and you know what we have right now is really just the consumer side, you know, the user focused platform. We are introducing a business focused enterprise software in the coming months, because we want to help companies to actually get better, not just point out that they're failing,
that they suck.
Exactly. But I mean, right now, you know, we sit in the motivation space. We're in that point where, you know, for job seekers, great, we're great for transparency. But for companies, and particularly companies where there are people in the organization who really, really want the company to do better and can see a route to doing so, and can't get the internal conviction, can't get people to invest the dollars or the time that's needed to then be able to shine that light on the results, and then be able to point to a place and say, well, if we don't do anything about this, reviews like this are going to continue. And this is how people speak about their experience. So forget what you think we're doing. This is what we're really doing. That's really where I think we sit at the moment. And I think that's been the feedback that we've received from our community of DEI practitioners. It's been great. I'm using this with my clients. Like, I want them to see that, you know, you have an opportunity to improve. People are speaking about the specific ways that you failed them. Let's jump on this.
Exactly. I think this is a great opportunity for people in that space. Just as you said, data is king. Information is king. And if you have it at your fingertips, then you have no excuse to not do better. And that's where I see Inside Voices making a huge input in organizations, in people in those professions and in those spaces to do better and be better. So I found you on TikTok. I saw your content on TikTok and I was so impressed, and I was like, I have to reach out to this guy because what you're doing is so amazing. And I felt like it was so important to share your platform on my platform and let the people know that you exist and the amazing work that you're doing. What inspired you to create the content that you create on TikTok? And I want to talk about some of the content that you create that really, actually, you know, I have it up right now. Like, the one that was watching just now was a really good one on like racism in the UK, because I think, you know, we talk a lot about racism in the US. We see it in all the different mass shootings and all these different things that are happening. And people almost feel like, I think the UK has done a really good job at hiding racism from the outside world. But it does exist. And you know that because you're British. I'm British. I know that. We grew up in spaces. We probably experienced it all at some point in our lives. I know I experienced racism going to school. So we've all experienced it. But the UK does a really good job at masking it. And I loved your video on how you talked about, you shared all those different articles and how racism is just, it's there. It happens from the government level. It happens from your friends, your family. Like you get it, you can get it at any
All the
level.
time. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really love that. But what inspired you to share your content on social media platforms such as TikTok? And what
Mm.
success have you had in terms of that converting with Inside Voices?
Yeah. Let's talk about that video for a second. So that video,
Yeah.
honestly, I actually think it was a little bit of an offshoot because I do try to, with my content, focus on racism in the workplace. And
Yes.
this,
Well, you
that,
do a lot of it.
yeah. And that video was not actually about the workplace. It was just about racism in general. But honestly,
Yeah.
I had just woken up. I was scrolling, and I was just getting more and more irate by the things that I
Hmm.
was reading. And,
Yeah.
literally 3 articles that I read in quick succession, all of them hit on perfect examples of racism
Hmm.
in the UK and the insidious undercover nature that it takes on. I couldn't believe that. I struggled so much to get, particularly Americans. I was born in the UK. I moved to New
Yeah.
York for the first time in 2015,
Hmm.
and the US is experienced at speaking about its racism, even if it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily overcome all of its problems. It's very much talking about it. The
Yeah.
UK, it's like censored. It's like we're
Yeah.
not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah.
You can't speak about it in private conversation. It's not spoken about in public conversation or in the media.
Yeah.
Every single time you see racist in the media, there's quotation marks as if
Yeah.
as if it's a made up term, like it's in the
Yeah.
name of a book. Like, and I really found I'm really frustrated by that because
Yeah.
it stops us from being able to get any progress because people can't even speak about their experiences without
Hmm.
other people attacking them and
Yeah.
accusing them of playing the race card or being
Hmm.
offensive
Yeah.
by telling someone that they did something that was racist. But
Hmm.
for my content in general, this professionals of color
Yeah.
are by nature risk averse. Now, that's just the nature of the success that we have
Hmm.
and the experiences that we go through, particularly in predominantly white institutions. It continuously reminds us that we need to be careful. We need to be thoughtful about what we do.
Yes.
We can't act out of anger. I've seen people rage quit. I've seen people scream
Hmm.
in the workplace. I've never seen a black or brown person do any of those things
Yep.
because we're
Yep.
very careful. And so with that comes this almost cloak of secrecy, this silence that
Hmm.
comes over all of our discussions about what happens in the workplace that's related to race. So we'll talk about it. You and I can chat about it,
Yeah.
and maybe I'll speak to one friend in the workplace if I consider them to be a friend that's white. But
Yeah.
will I speak to the whole entire organization? Will I speak broadly about it? No.
No.
And so I saw that, and I saw a platform like TikTok where people are talking about everything. People are
Everything.
just out there bearing their soul. I'm
Yes.
not Gen Z, I'm a millennial, but I see Gen Z out there bearing their soul.
Yeah.
But there were two things missing. One, I didn't see a lot of people speaking directly about racism in the workplace. And let's
Hmm.
not forget that for the majority of people, the workplace is the most diverse place that they go to.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of your time there, the
Yeah.
majority of your waking hours,
Hmm.
and it's the most diverse place you go to. So this is an
Exactly.
opportunity for us to actually have some interaction with people that are different to us and learn from each other, but we
Yeah.
can't talk about what's happening there.
Hmm.
On top of that, Gen Z, while I love that they are so outspoken, and I really think they're such a brave generation. Like
Yeah.
honestly, they make millennials so proud because it's like that's what we wanted to do, but we didn't quite have the guts to do it. They make us so proud, but um, but I do think it generally takes people a few years in their career to
Yeah.
really understand how much they are experiencing, how much they're being held down. I did an
Yeah.
article the other day and I was explaining to them that, if I were to change one thing about my career, I would be kinder to myself
Yeah.
and accept that, a lot of the things that held me back, a lot of the successes that I didn't feel like came at the appropriate time were
Hmm.
actually out of my control.
Hmm.
And it took me probably 10 years to finally accept that.
Yeah.
I don't think there were, most voices on TikTok are Gen Z voices, and I don't think there were enough people that had come to that realization, had that experience
Yeah.
personally, to see that actually the glass ceiling, you hear about it, but when you
Hmm.
feel it and it
Yeah.
starts to compress you, you smash your head up
Mm.
against it, then you realize, oh no, like I need to do something else has to happen here.
About it. Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to be the face for it. I was like, I don't have anything to lose in this respect.
It's
I've
true.
already left my organization. I've already raised my racial discrimination complaint and been
Yeah.
rebuffed. If
Yeah.
I'm going to be blacklisted, I'm already on it. So I'll
Yeah.
talk, because, I'm not even saying anything that we don't all know. I'm just speaking our truth.
Your truth. Yes. And I appreciate that. It's such an amazing space. And I think you're doing such a really good job at even addressing the most uncomfortable things. One of the other videos that I saw that you did that I like is talking about, okay, it's summer. And I don't want you comparing your tan to your black or brown colleagues. Like, could we not do that? Thank you. You know,
Yeah,
because I think that's something that we don't talk about, but people tan all the time and then they come, oh, look, I'm almost the same color as you. No, you're not.
right, right. And you can't even push back against that in the workplace. You
Hmm.
can't say like that's not appropriate. I
Yeah.
don't want to talk about this. Particularly in the UK, then you could never. Like, what do you mean? What's the problem? I don't understand. Like,
Hmm.
my my best friend's dog's friend was black. It becomes it becomes all of that. So
Yes.
like there are things that we can't say, particularly when we're dealing with microaggressions. And I do
Yes.
think some microaggressions have really been spoken about, and we've started to get that conversation going. But
Yeah.
I don't think people realize like every day is just 1,000 cuts.
Every day.
So
Every
yeah,
day.
so let's get that out there.
Exactly. I want to thank you so much, Echo, for taking the time to see a need and create inside voices. I want to thank you for your bravery. I want to thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your story and your experiences, and then converting that in such a way that makes it relatable, understandable, and easy for people to digest and not have to come back and then ask us questions to explain our blackness. Like, I really appreciate that you have created this space. I wish you every success with Inside Voices, and just kind of like tell us what's next for Ekow Sani-Thomas.
Thank you. So, like I say, next up, we are launching our enterprise offering
Mm-hmm.
because, one thing that has happened as a result of Inside Voices is I've had a proliferation, 1 million people contact me to say, hey, my organization needs help. Like, can you help
Yeah.
us? We're struggling to recruit, we're struggling to retain, we're struggling to even
Mm-hmm.
understand where our faults are. And
Yeah.
so we have 2 new offerings coming out in the coming months that are going to help companies take the temperature of their employees to
Mm-hmm.
understand actually how do they feel about what we're doing, where
Yeah.
are we sitting in
Mm-hmm.
our industry, how do we benchmark against our peers,
Yeah.
and how can we improve, and what work do
Mm-hmm.
we need to do to improve,
Yeah.
and how do we get in touch with those people, and then also how do we start to get access to and attract, not just be in front of, but attract the
Yeah.
diverse employees that we say we want, right? Because
Yes.
companies are out there saying like, oh, we really, you can't just put your job description, right? The same job description, post it on the same job board, and then put a sentence at the bottom that says we encourage Black and brown people to apply. That's not going to get the
Yes.
job done, okay?
No, it's not.
You need to start
Definitely
posting it,
not.
right? They need to start posting in different places, and
Yes.
you need to start changing the language that you're using, and you need to
Yes.
start talking about being transparent and honest about your
Exactly.
goals and your results when it comes
Yes.
to how you treat us, because nobody wants to walk into a dark cave. Okay,
No.
we are the Google generation. Millennials are the Google generation. We've been able to check everything. Every time I go to a restaurant, I can see what I'm going to eat before I get there. But when I
Yeah.
make a huge decision like what company I'm going to join, I'm supposed to do that blind. It doesn't make sense.
No.
And so we really want to
Exactly.
help companies to do a better job of being honest and transparent,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can see the advantages that they get when they do that, see and actually reap the benefits, particularly for those in companies that are really working hard to be more inclusive. And I
Yeah.
promise you, they are really out there. They're
They
slogging. They are
are.
investing. Those companies should be number one on everybody's list, but nobody even
Yeah.
knows who they are.
Exactly.
And so we want to put them
Exactly.
there.
I appreciate that because for so long, so many people they want to work in the top companies that they feel are like Apple and Google and Netflix, and
Right.
let's not talk about the lack of transparency in Netflix and their diversity numbers. And everyone thinks because these people put out diversity reports, that's the full long and the beginning and the end of the story. But there's so much hiding behind the scenes. They're not really telling their true stories. And the struggles that you still hear those employees having within their organizations. So having that knowledge, that output to be able to go and research and be able to get that knowledge to be able to make better decisions about how you go into an organization, whether or not you even think it's worth your time to apply.
Right.
Because contrary to popular belief, people aren't out there making silly choices about working anywhere anymore. People are making very conscious decisions about where they want to work and what they want out of the organizations that they work with.
That's right. People want the values to align with the organization.
Yes.
They want the culture to be a welcoming one where they can be themselves. And it is in a company's interest to have you be yourself when you're at work. Nobody needs you to be spending 10, 20% of your brain power trying to conform to their idea of what a professional is. 100% should be gone into the output, to the job that you were hired to do. And I think a lot of the time companies are missing that. But people, I think employees are wising up to the fact that they're wasting their time and they're not getting the best out of themselves. And companies are just going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming into the future.
Yeah, definitely. I want to ask you this last question. When it came to your experiences that you had in organizations, is there a point where you felt like HR failed you?
Yes. Yeah. The point at which I decided that, diversity could not just be, I say side hustle, I wasn't getting paid for it, but it couldn't just be, my passion on the side. And this was something I actually needed to get into with both feet, was at my last company when I raised a racial discrimination complaint. When we don't even talk about how much emotional turmoil you have to go through to get to the point where you're ready to raise a complaint like that. I really battled with it for over 6 months. Finally came to the conclusion that I could and should, and gathered my evidence, did all the things that I was asked to do. And throughout that process, I was misled, and I feel like I was betrayed. It's funny because this happens on almost all of my videos when we start talking about these things that happen in the workplace. People come on and comment, save emails, get a paper trail, send the email to the person after you had the meeting, summarize. I think what we don't discuss is that is for the suit. That's for the lawsuit. That's not for your HR complaint, because you will and should include it in your HR complaint. It's probably not going to make the difference. It's not going to win them over, because that is, unfortunately, you're not in a court of law. And so, I was in an organization I'd been in for about a year and a half at that point. I was in a very prominent position where I was leading the charge when it came to diversity. I was on panels with the CEO. I was speaking to senior leaders and having regular check-ins. I was reverse mentoring people. It was me, partly because they pushed the other Black people out that had voices, and I didn't know that at the time. And so I thought, well, with this position that I have now, this is my opportunity to demonstrate that if a company has the values, which my company said it did have, and it really wants to make the change, which I believed it wanted to make, then they can do the right thing by an employee. And when they failed to do that, honestly, I think I lost all my faith in HR in that moment. I think, I've always known that HR is there to protect the company, but I actually think in some instances, I think HR professionals can be too short-sighted about how they try to protect the company, and they protect the company's short-term interests, and they miss out. They forget to consider appropriately the long-term objectives of the organization.
Yes, and I will take that on point. I will say some HR professionals, not all HR professionals, because it would be remiss of me.
HR TikTok, please don't come for me. I'm sorry. I meant some.
HR TikTok will not come for you. I'm sure they will. But that's the whole point of having these conversations. And that's why, for me as an HR professional, I think it's so important to raise the awareness, not just about demystifying the misconceptions people have about HR. But like, how did we really get to this point? Because at the end of the day, what some persons deem as a misconception stems out of somebody's truth, right? It's a measure of truth or an experience that someone has had that has led someone to feel that this is the only reason HR exists. And
Can I ask you?
Sure.
How do you feel when people make the statement, HR is there to protect the company?
I mean, it hurts me because I don't ever think that that's my purpose. Like, my job is to make sure that every person in an organization that I work for has a good experience with me, whether that is the person is in the business, in the operation side of it, or whether it's the employees down below who are making everything happen, because I exist because they exist. Like, I exist because everyone exists. So for me, it's about creating the best experience for every single person that encounters me. I create products and services that are going to benefit everyone. And if I can't make the employees happy, then how does the business get their money? They don't. Yeah. If I have disgruntled and dissatisfied employees, then how does my business make profit, make any kind of money so that we can all get paid and so that the business can continue to exist? It can't. So for me, I don't ever believe that HR is just there for the sole benefit of the business. I'm there to benefit the people. And that's everyone across the organization. I always strive for a happy medium. So that's why experience like this break my heart every time. Like, I feel it crushes my soul. It's always like one of those things that makes me go, ugh.
I mean, listen, I'll say
being in HR, because I know that I am not that way, and I know that there are so many of my colleagues that are not that way inclined at all. I am very people driven. I've never been process driven. I know that handbooks exist, but do I feel that everything I do, I have to slap a policy at someone? No, definitely not. And do I feel that I have the right to do that? No. When people have managers who should be able to trust their teams and know their teams and understand their teams and give them the safe spaces to work. So for me, it's all about creating psychological safety across any organization. Anything else? I
agree. I think, I will say that HR professionals, probably more than any other department that I've ever worked with, the people that you meet, like the actual individual professionals, are the most overwhelmingly kind and nice. It's clearly an area of work that attracts people who want to be nice and help people. When I speak about HR, I'm really speaking about almost the institution rather than the people, because it's clearly about the incentives that an organization is putting on that department that is driving behaviors in different ways rather than what the individuals are deciding. And then also say that when it comes to the work of HR, these instances, these grievances, these flashpoints, they're just the tip of an iceberg. But all the way under that iceberg is all this work that we forget about, like the benefits policy and all these things that make working at the organization and made it attractive in the first place.
Yeah.
So, I probably should cut them some slack.
See the big picture is all I'm saying, because at the end of the day, sometimes our hands are tied by leaders who just don't want to see the big picture. Yesterday, I actually interviewed, but I shouldn't say yesterday because I don't know. Well,
you don't know when it's gonna come out. Don't break the fourth wall now.
Well, I interviewed someone recently who wrote a book. I don't know if you know Minda Harts, and she wrote a book called Right Within. And Minda was sharing her experiences, and she too said that based on her experiences, she felt like HR had failed her too. But, just not being remiss of the fact that, HR have a job to do. And she understands that not every HR professional is like that. It's just unfortunate that the HR that she encountered did not help her when she was dealing with her racial trauma in the workplace. And if you haven't read Right Within, oh my God, please read it.
Yes, read everybody.
Make it one of those books that you read every single year, just to keep in the front of your mind, the things that actually do happen in workplaces. And I would say every person should read that book. Doesn't matter what color you are. That book is a book.
Definitely, and I'm excited to listen to the episode that Minda's on. I didn't know you were having her on. I can't wait to hear that.
Yes, it's a great one. So look out for that one for sure. Ekow, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here today and having this conversation with me. I feel like we need to do this again for sure.
For sure, let's do it.
You have an open door.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to come in and talk, you want to tell us what's happening when you go to enterprise, anything at all, my door is always open for you.
Oh, fantastic. Let's call this part 1 then.
This is part 1. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of HR Sound Off. I hope that you found it useful. You can find this and all other episodes of HR Sound Off on all major podcast platforms. Spotify, Apple, Amazon, you name it, we're there. Remember, HR Sound Off is created by HR professionals for HR professionals. If you would like to share your story, then reach out to us and let us know. Make sure to hit the notification bell and subscribe to HR Sound Off on YouTube as well as Podbean. And we'll see you again when we next sound off.